Hello and welcome to the Week 15 preview. If you've made it to your playoffs in your season-long Friends Leagues, congrats to you. If you're in the playoffs in best ball, congrats to you. Or if you're just playing DFS for Week 15, tune in and let's dig into it. We're going to be going over the top running back and wide receiver one matchups for this week. I'm going to use our team defense tool on LineStar, linestarapp.com, or LineStar app on Android or iOS. It is only $39.99 per month. Gets you access to all we do, all the props, all the DFS. You get it all. I'm your host, Tyler Weeman, at FlatTyler83 on your DFS sites, and let's dig into it now. So, as I said, we will be using our team defense tool. It is a defense-adjusted metric similar to DVOA. There are a couple slight changes, though, that we have because we have a rolling average of 4 games to go over it, and then we have different time frames to judge this on. Now, for today's show, I'm going to do last 5 games. Last week, I did last 10 games. If you have a LineStar app, you can really switch between all of them to, get a different view and a different way to view it how you want to. Also, I'm going to go to the Fanduel slate just so we get that last Green Bay and Seattle game in there as well. If one of them pop up, we're going to do 6 on that instead of 5. Now, starting with the running back spot. We got Tony Pollard of Tennessee versus the Bengals. Now, this is an interesting spot. Rico Dowdle just had his way with the Bengals. They're giving up 96 yards a game on the ground, giving up 42 yards in the air, and a touchdown a game over the last 4. I'm pretty interested in Tony Pollard. He keeps getting it done, but he was also on this list last week, and the one thing I said with it was there isn't a ton of touchdown equity with him. Now, he could absolutely score 1. He can score 100. He could score 101 in the same game, but the likelihood of like 102 game is very unlikely. So at his price, I'm willing to get a little bit, but I'm probably not going to go super heavy on him just because the Tennessee Titans can't score the ball that much. And that really limits that, real high ceiling he has at his price. I don't mind having some. I think he's in a good spot. Absolutely willing to get there. The only worry really is the Bengals get out ahead real quick and early, and then the Titans aren't able to keep pounding the ball. Next, we got King Henry. Derrick Henry, 29th versus RB is the New York Football Giants. And if you look to the data here, they have been getting crushed on the ground. That is exactly what good old King Henry does best. So I like King Henry in this spot. There we go. I like King Henry in this spot. He has just come off really 3 games in a row where he didn't do all that much. Either didn't score a touchdown or didn't get a ton of yards. But I think that changes this week. I think they pound the ball with King Henry, and he gets his. The Giants are allowing 121 yards per game on the ground over the last 4 and 1.5 touchdowns per game. King Henry looks like he's in a great spot, and I do not mind getting a bunch of him whatsoever. He has 3 25-plus games, 2 30-plus games, and that's a pretty high hit rate, and now is in a smash spot. So love me some King Henry. Next, Rhamondre Stevenson versus the Arizona Cardinals. Now, what's interesting about this is they're actually giving it up more so in the passing game than on the ground, but it is still positive splits on the ground as well. Over the last 4 games, 90 rushing yards per game, 5 receptions, 42.8 yards, 0.5 touchdowns per game. So we will need a touchdown for Rhamondre to get it done here, which definitely can happen. He is $1,000 cheaper than Tony Pollard, so the touchdown equity, you get isn't as important, but it still is important. And like Tony Pollard, Not a ton of touchdown equity here. However, he does get his. He's had 3 20-plus games, and the Patriots kind of go how Rhamondre Stevenson goes. So if they're able to keep in the game, Stevenson probably does pretty well. If they aren't able to keep in the game, then the Patriots probably aren't doing as well either. So that's that. I'm probably going to have some Rhamondre, but not go super, super hard on him. Brian Robinson Jr. versus New Orleans Saints. Now, New Orleans Saints might struggle a little bit. They lost their quarterback, and it's a great spot on the ground. So I think Brian Robinson Jr. is in just a smash spot. They're pretty much the same defense they've been all year long. 107 yards per game on the ground for the season, 109.8 over the last 4, 1.1 touchdowns per game on the season, 1 touchdown per game on over the last 4. Now, B-Rob has been really good all season long. Last week, he had 100 and a touchdown. He isn't going to give you much in the receptions and receiving yardage category, but he can definitely rack up 100 and a touchdown in this type of matchup, and very much in consideration here. This Commanders offense has actually been surprisingly good as well. They've been putting up some decent points. So there is that real possibility of a 2+ touchdown outing. Just hopefully that comes with a lot of yards. He has had 1 game like that so far this year. I don't mind some B-Rob versus the Saints. It's likely the Commanders will run the ball a ton in this spot. And lastly, Braylon Allen. All right. It is versus the Jags. I love this spot. The one thing we do need to worry about here is if Breece Hall is coming back. Also, Allen and Davis pretty much split work last week. So it's not like you're getting a, guaranteed, 3 down back out of Allen. It is a little bit of a split workload. Maybe this week he sees a little bit more run than last week, but it's really hard to know. The other thing is we got to wait to see if Breece Hall comes back. Now, let's talk about the situation, because if Breece Hall comes back, then he's in a great spot. So far, over the last 4 weeks, the Jags are giving up 135.5 rushing yards per game and then almost 35 receiving yards plus 1 touchdown per game. This is a smash spot for the running back. Whoever is starting for the Jets looks great. Now, let's get over to wide receiver 1 and dig in here. All right, our first wide receiver we're talking about is Michael Pittman versus the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos have actually given it up a little bit in the air recently. They just got smoked by Jameis Winston a couple weeks ago, and they're giving up 210 yards per game to the wide receiver, and that ranks 25th in the league, but only 0.3 touchdowns per game. So you also have a quarterback with Anthony Richardson that doesn't throw a ton of touchdowns. So I think this is an interesting spot. One other thing to consider here is that Josh Downs could be back. It is an unknown situation right now. He missed the last week. Then they had then we're not sure if he's going to come back after the bye, because they did have a bye last week. That's what I was trying to say. And I think Josh Downs would be interesting in this situation as well. I don't love Pittman. I just don't love his role on this team. I don't love how he gels with Anthony Richardson. He is more, underneath middle type depth, and Anthony Richardson isn't strong in that category. So I don't love Pittman. If you want to have some Pittman, that's absolutely fine. But I do think some wide receivers in this spot are very interesting for the Colts. Next, we got Malik Nabers. All right, Malik Nabers came out of the gates hot. Had 18 targets in week 2, 12 in week 3, and 15 in week 4, and then has disappeared. So the targets have also been down since then. At least lately, he has 10, 13, and 9 the last 3 weeks. It appears with Drew Lock. Drew Lock is throwing him the ball again. Now he's in a great spot versus the Ravens, who are on the year allowing 177 yards per game and 1.2 touchdowns to the wide receiver. That is opponent rank 31st. They're allowing 34 points per game, fantasy points per game to the wide receiver. Malik Nabers is in an absolute smash spot. The only question here is, can Drew Lock get him the ball regularly? And can we see one of those 12, 14, 16 target games to Nabers? Because if so, there is the chance for a huge game. The issue, though, is can he get in the end zone or can he have multiple touchdowns? That's the big question. His price is up there for what he's done over the last, 6 weeks or so. Next, we got Ja'Marr Chase. What is there to say about this guy? There is no higher ceiling in the wide receiver area than Ja'Marr Chase, and he has just been absolutely crushing. 38 last night versus Dallas, 50 versus Baltimore earlier in the year, 36 versus Baltimore in the earlier year, 27 versus Washington. The one thing that I have to say about Ja'Marr Chase is this Bengals team is a little bit more reactive. So they wait a little bit to see if the other offense can do much before they really start getting aggressive and pushing the pace. In the games where the pace gets pushed, Chase crushes. If they don't have to push the pace, Chase really doesn't do that much. And unfortunately, I do not think the Tennessee Titans can push the pace in this situation. So while it is an amazing spot, I don't love it for Chase just because every game that we see of Chase going nuts, the other team has the lead for a big portion of the game. I don't think Tennessee Titans offense can do that to the Bengals. While the Bengals defense isn't great, I just don't see that happening, and therefore 9,400 for Chase in this spot for me is a little expensive. It is a great spot. I don't mind having some, but I'm not going to go overboard on this spot for Ja'Marr Chase. Next, we got Nico Collins versus the Miami Dolphins. Nico's been crushing. He has had a solid year, been pretty much as consistent as they come, has had a 27 and a 24-point game. Not much cheaper than good old Ja'Marr Chase, but it is a pretty interesting spot. This Miami Dolphins team has been pretty solid, though, versus the wide receiver over the last 4 games. However, they've slipped a little bit more average as far as actual results. In the adjusted metric, Nico Collins is popping a little bit, though. I have some interest in Nico. I think this game as a game environment for DFS or for fantasy is one that I do want to attack, as both teams can really get their offense rolling, and Miami's offense has been rolling as of late. That's one thing we really haven't seen much this year, is the Houston Texans really having to air it out. If they really got to air it out, there's a big time ceiling for Nico Collins. So there's absolutely interest here. Then last but not least, we got the Jets versus the Jags. Jags 27th versus wide receiver 1. Now we have Garrett Wilson as the wide receiver 1. It's a little bit of a toss up between him and Adams. Garrett Wilson obviously was here before Adams. If you look at the snap counts, Garrett Wilson does play more snaps. But then if you look at the targets, Adams has slightly out-targeted Garrett Wilson since Adams has been there. So do with you what you want here. If you want to say Adams is the wide receiver 1, go with that. If you want to say Wilson is, go with that. But really, it is a 1A and 1B situation, not a clear-cut A or 1, and both of these guys have a giant target share. So either one is in a very good spot, and the Aaron Rodgers stacks could get going. You might just want both those guys. They're allowing 175 yards per game to the wide receiver on the year. That's 29th with 1 touchdown per game on the season. over the last 4, 175 yards per game. The only difference is 0.8 touchdowns opposed to a whole touchdown per game. So Jets, Adams, Wilson in a great spot. That'll do it for us today, guys. I wish you guys the best of luck on your playoff fantasy football, your best ball fantasy football, and of course, DFS and your prop betting. Have a good one, guys. We will be back with more DFS content this week. Talk to you soon. Peace.